Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 157. My guest in this episode is Ashana Kaiulani. And Ashana and I had a conversation on her podcast, The Reclamation Room, and we agreed that she had to come over and speak with me as the host and her as the sage that we will learn from in this episode. And Ashana, to me, is an amazing person. She has a website that I will leave in the link below that you can access and find more of her work, but I won't say a whole lot and sort of preload how this conversation unfolds in the introduction. I just want you to meet her, and she's doing some incredible work, so I was very grateful to speak with her. And again, all contact information for both the Reclamation Room podcast and also her website, it's Your North Star Rising, will be available in the link below, and they will help you explore even more of Ashana's work. So, without any more rambling on my part, I will get this conversation underway. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your presence. I'd like to welcome Ashana Kaiulani to the IdeaCast interview series. Looking forward to a conversation that's going to touch on some matters that I think have affected, if not ourselves in our lives, people we know, people we love, and I will say in advance that we're going to cover some terrain that could be sensitive. So buckle up for that. My audience is pretty resilient folks, but if you're coming in and this is something that you were drawn to Ashana, maybe by a Google search, and you're just starting your journey of recovery and exploring the terrain of what it's like to be a survivor, welcome first of all. But yeah, we're gonna go into some interesting terrain. So I just wanted to say that as a disclaimer. And now I will say to you, Ashana, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really stoked to be here. I've gotten great feedback on your podcast episode with me, so I'm like, I'm so excited.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was going to share with the audience that you and I had talked on your show. And so you've gotten some feedback on that. That's good.
Yeah, I got a lot of actually male followers hit me up and they're like, this is good stuff. Like, you should have him back on. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's an integrative process for healing that we go beyond gender boundaries, right? Or beyond our roles, and that you're having male participants or audience. That's awesome. So that's really great. That's nice. But yes, we did have a conversation, and some of that might come up in this conversation. I listened to both of them this week just to bring myself up to what we had talked about. Whether I retained it or not, I don't know.
I was about to say, I don't know if I remember it that well, so we'll see.
I think there were a couple little things, and I'm like, oh yeah, maybe we could pull that back out. But yeah, I think we're going to drift back into the sort of nuance of what we were covering in that conversation. So at least I hope that we do, because I think again it was very generative, and to you, to say again, thank you for granting us that space to talk and have that conversation, because I appreciate it. So. Let's begin with you on my show as a guest. We'll find out about you and whatever you're comfortable disclosing about your personal life, but also as any survivor, as anyone who, as I think we talked about in our conversation before, we are the alchemists when we can come from adversity, come from a background that is trauma-informed, or however you want to say that, and seek to heal ourselves, but also be a lodestar or a lighthouse or whatever you want to say for the others in the world that are like, what do I do? So let's talk, let's bring that in, and connect the audience with that and connect me with that. I want to learn too. And then we'll go from there and talk about what you're doing at present. So.
Yeah. Okay. So this is actually really interesting because I just had a conversation with my best friend. She was visiting me this past weekend. And we got into this conversation of like, I don't know, have I ever experienced joy? Like, why have I been doing the things that I've been doing? Like, why do I feel this pull to do this? And then, so I ebb and flow. And in my work, even I have this urge of like, gosh, maybe I should just stop. Like, why am I doing any of this? And so digging into that, and then it's interesting we're having this conversation now because what I have been through, and I like to say that like we're not just what we've been through, right? But we have those pieces, and that's a part of who we are. And so it's a piece of the puzzle. But it's very much interconnected with what I'm doing now, because I feel like if I look back, I feel like I was always trying to just connect with people so deeply that I think that it caused people to feel uncomfortable. And so, like, I remember when I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, my mom smoked cigarettes, and I put them in the toilet and I flushed them down the toilet. And we grew up very poor, so this was a big deal.
Yeah.
And she could not fathom why I would do that. But it was because I cared about her and I loved her so much. And I had learned that cigarettes were bad and they were hurting her. And so I think it's this sense of like, I want to connect with people, but I also feel like this fierce protectiveness in me. And I think that goes back to my childhood of like being in foster care and then going into an abusive home, protecting my siblings, you know, making sure that the social workers didn't see that we were getting ourselves ready for school each day. And so making sure that my brother had taken his medicine for his ADHD, and like, we have to act normal. We have to blend in, right? Like, we can't be the weird kids. And so I think I carried that forward. So I was always the kind of kid who I had my nose in a book. I was always reading. That was my form of escape, but that was also my form of figuring out who I was as a person, because I did not have that connection with a parent the way that I would hope that I had, you know. Looking back now, I see that it did form who I am today. So I wouldn't say like, I wish I could go back and change that, because here I am.
Right.
But I have noticed that a lot of the things that I did in my life and the character traits in my life were from book characters. And so I grew up with this sense of protect your siblings, take care of your mom. I didn't quite know my dad yet. But constantly be in these stories that you're living with these characters. And I was very invested. I loved these characters as if they were my own family. Form your personality based on these characters. So the world to me was very much like this other place, that it was different. And I would see other people functioning and doing things, and it would just feel so different to me, like unattainable. And so people would have what I thought was normal lives and they would be happy. And I would be like, what in the world am I missing here? Like, what is going on? Everything is so hard. You have to struggle. You have to fight. You have to be scrappy to make it through. And on top of it, no one understands you. There is no closeness. My family was not a family of very much connection and conversation at that point, at least. And so I don't know. I like to say, or I guess I don't like to say, but I've started saying I didn't really have a sense of self. And so I came into this adult world when I was 17 years old, and I didn't know how to pump gas. I didn't know how to go out and get a job. I didn't know how to pay bills. I was terrified to order food or speak at the drive-thru. It was just this place that did not make any sense to me. And so I found myself in really, we'll just say unhealthy relationships. So they mirrored what I had been through, of course.
Okay.
They were very intense. And so I've learned looking back that I sought that intensity because it was getting me that sense of like what I had before in my childhood, right? Like, you're moving constantly. It's always unstable. Yeah. And so I was getting that from the relationships, but over time, I was also like nurturing that. I've got to protect others. I've got to take care of others. I've got to live for others. I've got to provide for others, be everything for everyone. And so I very much was this person who, until my mid to late 20s, did not even realize that there was meant to be a self under there. And so I think that's beautiful about what I'm here doing now, is that my biggest goal was always and still is to just connect with people, right? But it's in the everyday moments. It doesn't have to be like in a big, hard, horrible thing. It doesn't have to be like, yay, you did something, let me congratulate you. It can be as simple as someone just needed someone to talk to in that moment, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time. And it's just seeing people where they're at and like, hey, you're a self. And I think you're an awesome self. And I think that it's so cool. And I'm really passionate about making sure to share with people as much as possible in as many ways as possible. Even if I don't say it, I want to show it that they're important. And, you know, maybe they're funny, maybe they're kind, maybe they're cool. Maybe that was a great idea. Like, I appreciate you. That was awesome. Like, I saw you do that. That was really great. I'm really passionate about doing that. And I have found that typically the women who find me are the women who have been through similar things that I've been through. And for a long time, I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to revisit those places. But there was also a period of time where when I started facing them and I started working through them, that's all I wanted to talk about. And I got on people's nerves talking about it. And I pissed people off talking about it. And they're like, can you talk about this a little less? Can you be a little more quiet? So now I've kind of merged those two desires, like the desire to connect with others and protect others, but also that desire of like, your story is important too. It doesn't have to be who you are. It doesn't have to determine your identity. But if you want to share it and you feel like you're ready to share it, it deserves a place just as much as you do. So it's kind of this culmination of everything I experienced. And I'm looking back and I'm like, even on the days when I'm doubting what I'm doing, because sometimes it does feel like I would do this for free, right? And so there's that moment of like, is this a job, or is this just a really expensive hobby? Like, should I maybe go get a day job that's more normal and people want that? But I realized, no, I don't. I like this. This is what I'm here for.
Right. When you were speaking to your formative years, your younger years, and mentioning that the sense of self was absent or hadn't coalesced, and I'm trying to think of when you were faced with adversity or in pain or in a state of suffering, that has to be very difficult to not have a fundamental self or a locus that is processing that pain. So is that something you care to talk about? I mean, what would that be like? Because I think in my youth, I think I had I was fairly grounded in a selfness and a sense of who I was. Whatever that was, I don't remember. I don't know, but I mean, I'm trying to recall, and I think I was grounded in a kind of locus of embodied me, So what happens when someone's in that state and shock comes to the system? Can you share that, or is that okay? You're comfortable?
So I'm open book here. Open book.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. Yeah, it's a heavy question, so I just want to make sure you're good before I.
No, it's not heavy to me. So like, no worries.
Okay, good.
This is
good. All right.
My whole life I've been like this. Like, tell me more. Oh my gosh, let's dig in.
Yeah.
My case is unique in its own way. I know there's other people with cases like this, and it would be unique in their way. But my particular experience, not having a father figure yet, that came after foster care and adoption homes, but my mother was my original experience. And come to find out, she has borderline personality disorder also.
Okay.
So the person that I'm modeling myself after, I adored her. She was the most beautiful creature on earth to me. Like, oh my gosh. Her sense of self was not really there either.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say she didn't have one, because I'm not her, but I could very much see when it was different versions of my mother, and when it seemed catastrophic for me as a child to watch my mother constantly be in so much pain, especially at things that seemed not that big a deal. It seemed like these were just normal life things. And so having that need to, or feeling that need to consistently take care of her and be attuned to her and what her moods were, what she needed in the moment, while simultaneously also wanting her to want me and think I was cool and not get on her nerves and not be too needy, because then she couldn't handle it. And then also to help take care of my brother, because that might be too much, and then she couldn't handle that either, and who knows what would happen. I think it very much left me with this sense of like, everything is a threat. Like, the world is a threat. Other people are a threat. Vulnerability is a threat. Having emotions is a threat. And so for me, it became I'm trying to think if there's like even a metaphor to explain to people what it's like. It's truly, you know, how people say that you don't understand being a parent until you are one. And people say like your heart is walking around outside of your body, and people can't fathom that until they've been through it, because you would do anything for your children in an instant. That's what my life was from probably infancy. I mean, very young, because I was like that for my mom. I was like that for my brother. I was later like that for my younger brother and my younger sister. And so my earliest memories are having fears that my baby brother would fall going down the driveway, or having nightmares that my sister drowned and it was all my fault, or dreaming that I had to rescue my mom from a burning building.
Okay.
So the sense of, what do I feel here? What do I need here? What do I think about this? How does that feel to me? What does this mean? And then having that time and space to analyze it, to catalog it, to have something to refer back to in the future. I think that's actually why I use those book characters to form my reality, because there wasn't that for me. There was no card catalog to pull it out and be like, okay, what does this mean for me? Rather, it was, how's my mom going to respond to this? How's my brother going to respond to this? Because he had some mental health stuff going on too. Is this going to keep us safe? Are we going to be able to eat tomorrow? Like, you know?
Wow.
So very much like survival stuff. And it would have honestly felt like a luxury to be able to just sit and think about how I felt about things.
That's what I'm getting, because you are constantly, you're a caregiver, but you're also, you're out of yourself, much like somebody who's dissociated, because of being vigilant and having to, constantly monitor the room or the family unit and things like that. I get that. And so, not to speak to myself, but I think about, like a moment ago, I said, I think I had a sense of self as a child. And so I had the Machiavellian combative, parent that raised me, and the other parent was fortunate enough to get away, but the one that raised me, I didn't have the good common sense to fall in line and not cause trouble and not wake the monster, you know, and feel the wrath. So I just went headlong into that, and it was always combat. I think that was a reifying or an annealing process for me to have an identity, because I was constantly in a state of war, you know, or getting my ass whipped because I lost the battle, which I lost a lot of them, you know, until I was about 15. But so I'm doing comparison to like you being in this flux, this amorphic state of you-ness or Ashana-ness, and because you're being pulled in so many and it's very interesting, and I wonder how often this happens, that because when we're coming up as children, we imprint on our parents, we imprint on the immediacy of our the caregivers, those in our lives, and didn't have that necessarily. It was probably very weak or diluted, right? And so imprinting to an extent socially and emotionally onto, I don't even want to call them fictional characters, because they are, you know, they are possible creatures in a possible world. How often does that happen? And what I wonder what a good therapist might give us in the sense of like what's going on, because I think that happens to a far lesser degree for those who are probably in less adverse conditions growing up. Like oh gosh, what did I have as a kid? Star Wars or whatever when it came out. You know, you bond a Solo or what's the Skywalker thing, or your archetypal characters, and you know you wear a little of that on the way out of the theater, and it may stay with you in the playground as you grow up. But you were informed by these characters. Do you feel them inhabiting you now, like the ones that you learned from and learned to maybe assimilate into your selfness and portray to the world? Is that present still? I mean, just something that you feel in the background, or you think that's kind of washed over at this point?
I think there's times when, like, I still it's almost like nostalgic. Okay. So, and you said something really interesting. You were like, I wonder what a good therapist might say about this. Yeah. And in my head, I was like, well, a good therapist hopefully would reassure that person, like, hey, you were still doing what your brain is here to do. You were connecting with people, like, right. Go you know?
Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong. Yeah. But having gone through that and realizing like, my God, that was so unhealthy. Like when I was in high school and I was a teenager, I chose to lose my virginity simply because the book character chose to do it. And when she was a junior with a senior, so I did the same exact thing.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, like the conversations with a loving adult could have helped in so many ways. But it was even to the point of like getting tattoos that were based on these book characters, naming my children and pets based on these book characters, living out things in my relationships that were based on these book characters. Even like trying to have like a healthy view of sex was different because of course I was exposed to things I shouldn't have been. So I had no healthy concept of what intimacy was in any way.
Right.
I will say that there came a point when I noticed it and I realized it and I was like, oh my gosh, that's really sad actually. Like everyone else is out here like relationally making their way through the world and like the common sense almost of natural consequences. And this is what happens in the world. Like I wasn't even doing that. It was almost like I lived completely in a world of, I don't understand how any of this works. And so I'm just going to do what these book people did. I mean, there was a period of time where I was going to therapy and there were diagnoses put out there of like, you know, manic depressive and there even at one point like sociopathic tendencies. And I've come to realize like, it's not that, it's literally just that like I was lost in a drift and I just needed something to model myself after. I don't so much do it now. I don't like feel them pop up now or think about it in that way. But now it's more of like, I'm glad that those people were there for younger me, because if no one had been there for younger me, it could have been devastating even more so.
Yeah. Yeah. You would have been a tragedy rather.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now it's interesting again, in possible worlds and you taking psychology into account. If a child were introjecting or imprinting on really positive and upbeat fictional parenting, you know, let's say there was a vacuum of parenting, which happens all the time. But you know, if there were these super ideal characters that were fictional and it molded a child, you know, I'm just trying to wonder.
That would be
like,
great.
This could really go both ways, right? Like you're reading pulp novels about, you know, gore porn, like people getting cut up and that horrible nightmare stuff. Or you have this really idyllic thing where there's people doing really deep things that are really egalitarian and meaningful. Yeah, I was like, that's just it's to me it's real, but it's also the potential in it as it's abstracted away from what we would call normal parenting relations and our bonding with, you know, those who we first come in contact with as babies and toddlers and into our adolescence. Yeah, what a wild mindscape that is, or mind walk that would be to explore that. And I guess I'm ignorant, but I guess some of that's happening with children and tablets, and you know, they are, you know, the parents busy doing whatever, and the kids got this thing in front of them. So I have a feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Senses of humor, ways of relating. Honestly, like I saw a big difference when it became less of like just me parenting my children more on my own and then moving into a co-parenting relationship where other things have been introduced more. Seeing the way that especially my sons relate, like the way they speak, their sense of humor, like the way they talk, their inflection, like their volume, it's YouTubers.
Yeah.
And it's immediately recognizable. And I'm like, wow.
Yes, 100%. Because my wife and I joke that we'll listen to people and they sound like there's this, like years ago, everybody that watched TV, you know, before the internet, would take on like a California, the slang and even the sort of California accent, if you will, and going over into England, like England or Ireland. And if they watched a lot of American television, even the accent and the brogue would be watered down a little bit. You could meet people. But now, I agree, because people up-pitch the last syllable. And when they finish a sentence, or there'll be other little nuances that, like you said, they come from influencers. They'll come from like the Kardashians or something like that. So it's thought virus. It's the social contagion, I guess. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's how we create society. That's how we move forward as whatever we are, higher order
Yeah, it gives
things.
you a different way of looking at like the responsibility that we have of what we put out into the world, right? Like,
Mhm.
everything that we put out
Yeah.
into the world is informing that.
Yeah, it is. It's feeding
Mind
into a
blowing.
collective. Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah, it's a lot. And one last weird note, because I like to bring up weird stuff on how we are formed and how we imprint or we are imprinting. Is I watched a documentary years ago about this poor child. Her parents were raging alcoholics in Russia. They threw her out of the house at like 4, and the dogs raised her. She lived with the dogs for, I don't know, like a year and a half before somebody came and found the child, and the child
Yeah.
imprinted to the dogs, and she was a dog. And they couldn't teach her language because she went through the language barrier. Like, I guess, until you're about 13, you can pick up 2 or 3 languages and be fine. She never learned Russian. She couldn't speak, so she was muted, and so she was unteachable at that point. And she had gone so long in the backyard with the dogs, but she had dog sense in a weird way. It's a horribly, tragic story, but interesting to again give us
Yeah.
insight about how precious those first maybe 12 years of a human's life is to reciprocate with the outside world and with the caregivers that are in our presence. And it speaks well to, as you said a moment ago, be careful what you put out, into the ecology, because whether it's the bigger social picture, the bigger society, or your family,
Hmm.
you have to think about what's radiating out and how that impresses, because like I said, we'll imprint onto anything. That
Yeah.
child was an example of that she just had to be a dog, and
Yeah.
she even walked on her
On all
hands,
fours.
yeah, like that.
Wow.
And yeah, and they had to put her in a home. She's living a humane life now. This was in the early 2000s when I saw the documentary, so I don't know. You could probably
Wow.
Google it and see it if anybody
For
in the
sure.
audience wants it.
You reminded
Okay.
me also, just really quickly, I remember the first time I realized that like people are out here in the world choosing to have children and like bringing their children into the world as like, this is better now. Like, we're glad you're here. That was a foreign concept to me because all of
Oh
us
yeah.
were complete accidents, right? And like
Hmm.
kind of resented, kind of like, we're a burden. Your life would have been a lot easier without us. And so when I
Yeah.
realized that like people actually plan to have children and like sometimes don't, I was just
Yeah.
like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, this might be TMI, but when you and I had our conversation on your show, we talked about my parent that
Hmm.
brought me up. And that was one of their Machiavellian tricks that they pulled, because one time I was winning an argument at like 16. I was 16 years old, and she pulled a sucker punch on me, and she goes, "You know what? I was never going to tell you this, but, and this is really horrible, so I'm sorry to the audience if this is too much." She goes, "Your father beat the shit out of me because I wouldn't get an abortion." And I'm like, "You're telling your son that? Really? What kind of human
Wow.
being are you?" So, I was just surprised children, they were talking about like, we can't afford this child. And I didn't have the wherewithal to retort and say, "Well, you should have, you should have aborted
Yeah.
me. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, so I wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be dealing with you." But,
Yeah.
and so anyway, there's water under the bridge, but I was just like, you are so low to bring
Yeah.
that one out. I even told my father about that, and he got really upset. He's like, "That's not exactly how it went down. I didn't beat her." And so he kind of, but that's how she constructs her world. It's like she's the hanging from the cross, and the light shining down and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
sorry to bring that tangent up, but it speaks
No.
to this
Yeah.
when it's time to bring a child in the world, be prepared to do it, and be prepared for what comes for that. Yeah, even accident or
Absolutely.
planned or otherwise. Anyway,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, that was a sucker punch. I thought, well, okay.
I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah. Speaks well for you, my friend, my dear mother. Yeah, speaks well for you. Anywho, enough of that. So you're in your teenage years, and so that you could not, they call it adulting. Like, I know millennials were it was kind of like a punchline about 10 years ago, the how do I boil water and all this kind of stuff, but you were really living that life. And so was it because you were insulated in the foster system, or just not given so normal parenting, they put you out there and they get you in the stream and you learn to swim? And so is that what was going on? Is that you were sort of ensconced in a world that just you weren't able to probe and learn and onboard? things that should be part of the normal teenage routine, or what was going on? If again, you don't mind.
No, I'll totally share because
Okay.
I feel like it's good to have these conversations because we go through what we go through and then
Mm-hmm.
there comes a point where we're like, oh my gosh, other people's lives are different. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
So I will say that when my mom was in her good moments, she was an awesome mom. Like she would listen to our stories and she would be like, wow, that's so cool. And she would want to include us and she would just talk to us like we were humans and like we
Mm.
could, help cook or, I mean, incredible person.
Okay.
So of course, again, I adored her, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And was able to just completely bypass all of the negative and just as we do. So I was 7 when I went into foster care. And at that point, I had been taking care of my newborn baby brother. And when we first went into foster care, there were 4 of us kids and they split us up, which was
Oh my God.
devastating.
Yeah.
So the first foster home was really abusive to my baby sister. And thankfully, I was able to tell the social worker. So we got taken out of that home. And then they split us up again, but they split us up differently this time. So, different kids were with different kids. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually we were in a long-term foster care. It was me and my baby brother and they wanted to adopt him, but they just wanted a baby boy. So
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that was when I went into the adoption home.
Mm-hmm.
Now at this adoption home, there were group mothers, like group home mothers. So
Okay.
as long as you were back around dinner time, nighttime, you could get in bed and they knew you were alive when their shift ended. It didn't matter. We wandered the neighborhood. We were doing things that we had no business doing. Like it was awful. I wonder how we all made it out alive.
Yeah. Right.
So
Excuse me.
in one aspect, I was way prematurely aware of things that I shouldn't have been.
Okay.
But at that point, my biological father, who was also my baby brother's biological father, was told that he was being adopted. So at this point, he came back into the picture and got custody of both of us. So
Okay.
I guess when I was around 1, like he had left and had a new family and whatever, what have you. So he came back and he got custody and I adored him. I thought that this was like the knight in shining armor. Like, oh my gosh, you're
Mm-hmm.
so cool. I found out really quickly, huge culture shock. Number 1, he was extremely physically abusive,
Okay.
shockingly so. His wife was as well, but she picked and chose when she was. So hers was
Okay.
more like slapping in the face and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But I guess around the time that like pubescence hit for me, I started to speak up a little bit more.
Okay.
And I was recognizing like, wait a minute, they can only put me on restriction from so many things, right? Like eventually their power runs out. Like you can beat me all you want. I'm not going to cry. The end.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm more
Mm-hmm.
stubborn
Mm-hmm.
than you. Keep trying.
Right. Yeah.
And so it became very much a battle of power dynamics with my father and the other children in the home. I had a stepsister and another half sister with him.
Okay.
They laid low. They
Mm-hmm.
kind of did their thing. So I became like the family rebel, the black sheep, the bad kid, the bad influence,
Yeah.
And as a result of that, especially being the oldest in that home, my father was raised in a very strict home, very.
Okay.
And so we weren't allowed to do anything except go to church, go to school, do band functions, and come home. That was it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was no staying with your friends. When my friends were going and rolling homes with toilet paper as part of the senior pranks, not in a million years. Like,
Right. Right.
heck no. And I was also 2 years younger than all of my friends because I had been so intelligent as a child that they skipped me forward 2 grades. So all of my friends were driving and dating and going places, and I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so senior year, I had just turned 17, and that was when he withdrew me from high school and I moved out on my own. And it was just this sense of I have literally been living in a bubble where this person did not want to admit that there was a life before him. So when I would make comments about being poor, pulling cockroaches out of the coffee pot so that we could have coffee the next day when I was 5 years old,
Right.
learning to roll a cigarette of sorts when I was very young, walking to the store and getting my mom cigarettes, but not having food when I got home. Like I would say, yeah, growing up poor, da da da. And he would say things like, you don't even know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to be poor. And I thought that was weird because I'm like, wait a minute, you were gone. You don't even know what my life was like before you.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is that he was in denial of that. And so there wasn't allowed a life before him.
Right.
So it was very much, I had lived in my mom's bubble of fear, right? Everything was a threat. Now I was living in my dad's bubble of fear, where everything is a threat and everything must like bow down to him and respect him. And you can't have a voice. You can't be rebellious. So not only did I not know how to do anything from living in this bubble, I knew how to do all the wrong things. So lie, steal, cheat, manipulate, like you name it. I had learned it, right?
Okay.
From my mom, and then from wandering the streets at young ages. But then all the things that everyone else was doing that were quote normal, they were terrifying to me. So everything, again, the entire world was a threat. So I think it was just a perfect storm of everything.
Okay. And it was less that you didn't know how to do it. It was just like, this is something that it's like you said, it's a threat. It's fear invoking, right? It's something that's,
if I did it wrong,
overwhelmed. Okay.
If I did it wrong. So that was his like main form of communication with me when he wasn't like getting me overtly in trouble. It was criticizing everything I did. So anytime I did speak my mind, have an opinion, talk about a book, talk about a movie, talk about something I had learned, he would correct me. And he would be sure to tell me like why I was wrong, why it was stupid what I was saying, why he knew better. He always carried himself as if like he knew the final say on everything. And this is my perspective of how it was. I don't want to say anything badly about him as a person, but as a teenager who, like, my role at that point in my life was to discover my voice and discover a personality and to grow in my independence and confidence, it was extremely damaging. So I had this crippling fear of like, you can't ever do anything wrong, because then not only are you stupid and unlovable and undesirable and like silent treatment grounded for years, but then there's also like the physical consequences that, it was so many things.
Yeah. Okay. And again, that's why I was joking about, the millennial curse. And it's like, no, this was more that this was wound opening to try to because you're doubting yourself. You're behaving the way, that you were informed by, that particular style of, you want to call it that type of parenting. Okay. Thank you. And again, this could reach somebody in the audience and they'll be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not the only one that had that kind of experience.
Good. That would be awesome.
I have one more question about your past, and then we're going to move up into the future and talk about some really incredible things. But, so I'll start and it's not comparison. It's more that I'll be vulnerable and I'll share.
Yeah, please.
And then so I disowned, that parent 23 years ago. Are you on, any kind of, communication or speaking terms with your folks? Given the histories? Yeah, because like I said, I had to stop. And it wasn't even for me, it was my wife. That woman was torturing my wife, and I said, you know what, that's it. I'm done. I am done. Yeah. And so I feel good. Life's been a lot easier.
That you have that boundary.
Anybody out there, don't feel guilty if you have a terrible situation, because I was racked with that guilt for years. Like, who disowns their mother? Who disowns their mother? Because everything in every society, love, and it's even in the 10 Commandments, for crying out loud. It's like, but no. If there's something, and we'll get into narcissism in a little bit. There's one more tangent on my part, and then I'll hand it over to you. There's Michael Mann did a movie called Heat in 1995 or 7 with Pacino and De Niro and all these guys. And the catchy little line in there was like, don't become attached to anything that you are not prepared to walk out on in 30 seconds or less if you should feel the heat coming around the corner. So I kind of adopted that. I'm like, don't get attached to anything if the heat's, too much. Just go, So anyway, and a lot of people who deal with shitty relationships, they already know that. But just to throw that out to the audience. So your folks, what's going on with that?
So I will say that after I turned 18. So I moved across the country with my girlfriend at 17, turned 18 in Arizona, found myself there, loved it. Like, oh, so beautiful. Okay. I did eventually come back here to Alabama to be with family. Not my
Excuse me.
parents, but I had another person who I loved very much who had been like a non-biological parent to me.
Okay.
But I did reach back out at that point and tried to have that relationship again with my father because I had not spoken to him at all while I was in Arizona, like at all. They did quote accept me back again. I was the astray child here, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Figures.
so I continued that relationship for a long time, and I fit in well, I think, because I was able to, consume alcohol with them and reminisce about all of the trauma and make jokes about it. And I was able to continue living that family role of like, I was the rebel. I was just the scapegoat. And it was funny. Ha ha ha. We're all drunk anyway. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
So there was one time where one of my sisters overheard him telling my other sister, like, she never liked you anyway. So I don't know why you try to be close to her about me. And my sister stood up for me to him, and she's like, why would you say that about your children? Like, that's awful. And I think that was a little bit of a wake up call for me where I started distancing myself a little bit because number one, that's not true. I didn't dislike my sister. There was always the triangulation there. Cause that, get the attention off you.
Manipulation. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the final straw for me was where I was finally beginning to speak out about how his best friend had raped me when I was 16. And he found out about it. And the age of consent in Alabama is 16. And so there was no way to press charges.
Okay.
But I also felt like he didn't really do anything about it. He didn't ever talk to me about it. He didn't ever, his best friend did call and was like, hey man, I'm going to come down for Thanksgiving. And he was like, don't ever come here again. And that's that.
Yeah.
But 10, 15 years later, here I am ready to talk about it and ready to share about it. I've remembered exactly in detail what happened that day. Like, and so I was sharing, and my husband actually overheard this. My father actually said that none of it would have happened if I wouldn't have been wearing short shorts. And I was shocked for a second. I'm like, did he just say that? Like, and my husband stood up for me and said something to my dad. But then it was just swept under the rug again. And that was when I realized, like, that's how everything has always been. Like, he gets to have his say, and anyone else's perspective of anything is simply not true. So when he withdrew me from high school, he told my grandma and my family that I had dropped out of high school. And they all believed this about me for all of these years. And I'm like, no, like, no, not at all. At the moment, I had a girlfriend, and my theory is that he didn't want my gayness to rub off on my siblings. So he withdrew me from school so I couldn't be around them.
To get rid of you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's just my theory. I don't know. I can't think of another reason why a parent would withdraw their child from school 4 months before graduation when Oxford University had reached out to them. I mean, I had many scholarships lined up. Why else would you do that? So eventually I did send him a letter. I think it was about 4 years ago now. And I just told him, like, I'm not mad at you. I'm hurt. And I know that me explaining all these reasons I'm hurt to you, they're likely not going to help, but I'm going to try one last time. Like, I'm going to just share my heart with you. And as your child, I get that I'm an adult, but I would love for you to just read this as a parent. And this was my perspective as a child. And here's what I went through. And I feel like I was failed by everyone, but it felt like you dug the knife in a little bit deeper because after everything I had been through, there was the abuse on top of it. There was the criticism. I was crippled emotionally. And he never responded to it. I did contact him and ask him if he could take my kids off his social media. And he responded that he won't be doing that because those are his grandchildren. So I left that alone. I have not spoken to him since. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I recently realized that his values and my values growing up were very different. I really wanted connection. I really wanted to matter to someone, and he really wanted obedience and respect.
Yeah.
So I don't think those two can really mesh very well, especially not when it's a parent-child situation and the parent's role is to provide that connection for the child and model respect and model, So, as far as my mom goes, I did continue to remain in contact with her for a long time, but it was always like she needed a favor by the end of it. And so like she would reach back out and say she wanted to help with my kids and get them some Jell-O and yogurt after they got their tonsils removed. Okay, Mom, that's so sweet. Like, wow, that's so nice of you. I know you don't have that much money and you're spending it on getting my kids Jell-O. Like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And then she showed up with like a duffel bag full of laundry and was like, by the way, can I wash all my laundry at your house?
Okay.
And washed every bit of laundry, I swear, that she ever owned in her life. And
Oh
then
my God.
dipped out and was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I can't let this happen to my kids. You know, I've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to the shenanigans. It hurts, but there's children involved. If it were just me, I would probably still keep trying because I love you and you're my mom. And there's probably something for me to look at there, but there's kids here. And I don't want them to get excited that Grammy's back in their life and then disappearing again. So I can't.
Yeah.
But I did see her recently in a store and I said her name and I said, I just want to let you know, like I wrote you a letter a few years ago. And she's like, well, I never got it. And I'm like, well, that explains why I haven't heard from you, heard back. I gave her my phone number and I said, listen, I don't have any hard feelings. Like we all go through hard shit. I don't blame you for any of it. You're my mom. Here's my number if you need anything. And I haven't heard from her. I don't think she wants a relationship because I became a threat by the end of that relationship, right? Everything was a threat. And I think that included me. By the time I started saying, Mom, the drugs aren't healthy. Mom, the pills aren't healthy. Mom, constantly having to smoke to function is not healthy. Like, these are your kids. So I became a threat, and that's okay.
Yeah. No, you have to let the chips fall where they will. And that's, a story about her coming over with Jell-O, but, really just needed to do laundry. That's a sign.
And I think
right?
in her mind, I think it was different in her mind. I think she just thought maybe I could two birds, one stone, Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very utilitarian because, again, she has dirty laundry and you have the resources to clean it. And she's doing a nice thing, which she was, to her credit. She was bringing that. But yeah, it's almost transactional, in a sense. But that's again, and that's one thing that you and I can touch on as almost an aside. But we're conditioned broadly, I think, in society. Maybe it's the TV sitcoms that we watch, or the idealized family, the idealized, stable, mentally sound person, and we expect normal. My wife will get upset sometimes and I'm like, don't expect normal from crazy. Don't expect normal from dysfunctional. And it's a little harsh when I say that, but it's like, and I have to say it to myself too. But, we try to project onto people that they're going to fulfill this role of mother archetype or, sister archetype or brother archetype. And when that falls short, if you can be pragmatic about that, like you just said, that's her lens. That's her means of getting through life, that's so therapeutic and so valuable. When you don't, so in other words, you could default to judgment and say, what an asshole, why did you do that?
Right.
But when you can see them, that they're in their operating system, they're doing their thing and it's like your father. I got pissed when you said the shorts thing, and I'm like, that's his operating system, it's like, and you see that. So if he's from the rural South, and I've lived in the South my whole life, you're raised a certain way, and, there's certain this and that. And I could trace the lineage of that comment back, where it comes from. It's horrible, but that you trace it back but still nonetheless, that just gets me mad.
I mean, I can sit here and justify it from someone else's perspective, but that doesn't mean that I need to allow it or that I agree with it.
No, what a horrible thing to tell your daughter. Yeah. You could say that to your buddies at a bar and still be an asshole, but to say it to your daughter, like, well, it wouldn't have happened if you. Well, what if you were wearing a burqa? What if you were fully in a robe or something? Would that have diminished that predator's move or actions? No, it wouldn't. You were young and you were available, and that's the only criteria. And he was making a power play. That's the bottom line. So shorts. Anyway. Sorry. Trigger.
No. I think in that situation, I think that him admitting otherwise would mean that he would have to admit that he either was oblivious or allowed it when his best friend groomed his daughter for 3 years straight. Because no matter what I was wearing, at some point, the clothes would have had to come off, right? Yeah. And for me to feel comfortable enough for that to happen, you know? But again, that would be my fault at that point because that was a choice I made. So me having my own daughter now, she's 12, but I put her at age 16. I don't believe that the age of consent in Alabama has any right being 16, because at 16 years old, that's a huge commitment. That's a huge thing that you're not really sure what you're agreeing to. On the physical plane, yes. But there are so many other things involved that I don't think a 16-year-old is ready for. I really don't.
No.
I see my daughter at 16 and I'm like, no, there's no way.
No, that seems like an 18th century law when you live to 30. And you started making a family. And usually back in those days, it was a 30-year-old man marrying a 13-year-old girl or 14-year-old girl. My mother did genealogy, the one that I disowned. She was a genealogist. There were so many marriages. And so the guy would get married at 18 or 20 or whatever, but the first wife would die of childbirth, second wife childbirth, and they just keep marrying 18-year-olds, even though they're 26 or 28 or 30 years old. So you can see the provenance of all of that, but it's 2025 or where, come on. Yeah, because 16 is ridiculous.
At some point you have to tap into your heart, right? Like, I don't care how it was done before. I don't feel comfortable thinking about that happening to my daughter at 16. That's enough for me.
No. As you said, physically, it's one thing. Emotionally and psychologically, it is a whole nother ballgame. It is a tidal wave of feelings and emotions and things. And they're not, I'm sorry, at 16, that's just a lot to deal with, Hang
on one second. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Is this live or can you clip things out?
Oh, I can edit if you want.
Okay, hang on. Hello.
I'll pause.
Oh, honey. Which one did you forget?
Yeah, so suffice it to say, I agree 100% that, 18 may be the right age. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously contingent on a lot of things, but yeah, 16. No.
Yep.
No, that's crazy. Especially when you're opening the door to older people taking advantage of it. 16 and 16 is, again, it's, but still. Not good. So, if you're good, let's move into where we're finding you now and what you've done with what we've gone over in the last 40 minutes or 45 minutes. And, because that, I think we talked about it when you and I were, on having a conversation on your show about the power of alchemy and the power of transformation and how we can, go down one of two paths as a result of a, adverse childhood or adverse upbringing. And the other, we don't even want to talk about. Yeah. We find out about those people on those, shows, it's like scary serial killers and things like that. And it's like, that's
could have been me.
Honest to God, I was dark as a teenager. I had some terrible spaces in my head, and so I'm glad I got through that and didn't act on anything. But it's so generational too. Not to get into it, but it's just like, wow, it's to recognize that and catch that, because my heart breaks for people who are broken like that. They were sensitive children, but the darkness and the abuse and all these things, and it just, you can see again, you can trace lineage of these trajectories and things, and it's that
Absolutely.
Poor child, I mean, whatever they did was heinous, whether it's spontaneous or it was some sort of weird, freaky serial killer type thing. It's just, it could have been prevented, and there could have been a shining light of a person that emerged, from their life experience. So anyway, you went down the path of alchemy and transformation. And so let's open that up. If there's territory we need to cover between late, teenage years and coming back to Alabama, to kind of where you are now, let's please cover that. But we'll catch you, in the what I find to be really good work, and coming from someone who was, again, forged, annealed and formed, in through experience. Because if I'm going to go to a therapist, and I know I need therapy, but if I'm going to go to a therapist, I want to go to somebody who has some reflection. It's like they didn't just go to some really good school and they have a lot of good ideas. That's great. But I also want somebody who's going to share a story with me and go, this, and we'll do comparisons and stuff like that. I mean, it's not good therapy to do that, but I'm just like, I want to commiserate with someone. So anyway, but you have the chops. And so, you bring authenticity to the table when you're helping people. So but I'll shut up and let you
No,
talk.
that's good. I mean, you bring a good point here. Like, can someone really see you through the darkest of times if they haven't at least had a tiptoe through them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a really dark moment for me too. You know, I shared about some of my more negative aspects of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that I immediately chose the path of alchemy. I actually think I chose a very similar path to what my mother and father chose for a time.
Uh-huh.
Because I did fall into that abusive relationship and I did start
Okay.
having kids very young, and I did
Mm-hmm.
continue in the authoritarianism of that because that's what
What
you
you
do,
do.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Apparently. And so it wasn't until several children in when I realized, like, wait a minute, this does not feel right. And there's a different way to do things. So I think even waking up to that realization is big,
Mm-hmm.
because it would have been very easy for me to continue down that same path because that's easier, in my
Okay.
opinion. Continuing to drink or smoke or even fall into drugs and
Mm-hmm.
resort to physical violence to get your way is way harder than facing the things that are being mirrored back to you that you will need to work on in yourself to be able to hold space for that, especially when it comes to, like, these are my children. So now these things that they're reflecting back to me, well, they're partially my fault, right? Like, I know there's more than one parent involved, but my gosh, like the propensity to wallow in shame, I became very aware of perhaps why my mom had turned out the way she did. So it wasn't an immediate route into alchemy. It was a willing route, but I will say that it was a very, like, in victimhood willing route, because
Okay. Okay.
for a long time, I still wanted someone to either rescue me or tell me what to do or show me the way. And I dove into, like, different religions, right? Like, there's got to be an answer. There's got to be a
Mm-hmm.
way
Mm-hmm.
to be happy and to figure this out and to not feel like this all the time. I cornered the pastor's wife in the bathroom and was like, I don't understand. What are you having faith in? And she was like, I just have faith. And I was pissed. I was like, but
Mm-hmm.
in what? Like, what is it? She's like, I can't explain it. I can't tell it to you, but when you know, you know. And I'm like, this is bullshit.
Right,
But
right.
okay. So there's some Buddhist meetings here. I tried that. I was chanting for a while and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
none of this is bringing a sense of inner peace. Like, I was still having, like, the partying weekends, right? Where you live for the
Mm-hmm.
weekend. And so I think the moment came for me when, I realized that you could just be a different way from the way that everyone else was being. But I came to terms with the fact that you were probably going to lose all the people that were doing it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So this need that I had had my entire life to connect with people, it was like ripping out my own heart, because in order to be true to myself and, like, really excavate and, like, heal, I
Mm-hmm.
had to lose those connections with those people who weren't okay meeting this new me, or who
Mm-hmm.
couldn't at least recognize that there's a different way of being, one that I'm now embodying. And do you still
Mm-hmm.
want to have a relationship? And if the answer is no, then I'm losing them. Because once you go down that path of authenticity and you start to feel what that feels like to be in tune with what you really need and what you really want and what feels right. Once you start that, it's really difficult to go back and just, like, do all these self-harming things again.
Mm-hmm.
That comes with a lot more shame. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I can look back and see where my parents might have even had that experience, and it would be so easy, so damaging to myself and others, though. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that desire to connect with others and keep pushing forward that I had my whole life is what propelled me into this alchemy. Because once I realized that it was safe to share my story, it was safe because I had always been a writer, to write my experience, and I would share it just with a small audience. And people would say, thank you so much. Like, I'm so glad you shared this. I needed to hear this. I was like, wait a minute. There might be other people who have been through something even remotely similar, and they're still thinking that they can't use their voice. They're still thinking that there's not another way to be. Like, they could be where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it pushed me forward. And the more people I met along the way, it was always like they wanted me to help them. They wanted me to hold that space for them. They wanted to ask me for advice, like, what would you do in this situation? Like, can you please tell me how to do this? Great. I may have good advice. That's awesome. But what I found is that I actually learned just as much from those people as they learned from me. And then I realized this is what I've been wanting my whole life. This is what it's all about. Literally, like, this is what it's all about. And I know that sounds so cliche, but I believe that. Like, this is why we're all here, is to have the different personness that we all have, and to share it, and to help sharpen one another, and to grow, and to learn, and to just have this smorgasbord of flavors, right? And we can't do that when people are upset about the flavor that we bring to the table and they want to smack it off the table, or people are convincing us that it's not okay to put salt in that. And so we stop putting salt in that, and we really need to. Or if people don't like a dish from a certain area, so we stop delving into that area. Like, we can't really bring authenticity to the table if we're listening to other people and their opinions. We have to feel what's right and do it. And that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. It almost speaks to a kind of preparatory ritual that one would have to go into when one is engaged in the work of daring to go into communion with someone else to talk about these kind of things and open these kind of things up. Is there can't be that shutting down process, like you said, like, oh, we can't go there, or no, this is, not safe, or whatever the story is, like you've been sharing. And it's like that. I think that needs to be really underscored, is that it's almost like, when certain cultures go into a ritualistic practice, that there is that sort of, you fast before you do it, or you atone, you confess, or, you're having a cathartic experience. Then you can go in, and there'll be less, temptation to say, oh, no, we can't do that. No, it's like, I want to go. It's like you and I both shared some, vulnerable things, especially you, with what you've gone through. And I think that, you can be in that space and talk about that, and not being worried about, somebody clutching their pearls or recoiling that, something happened. So anyway, just that we be mindful of that when we work, because I think, as we talked in our conversation previously, it's a sacred space that we're opening up when we care for each other in this way. Whether it's family or people like a coaching client of yours or someone that you're helping, that you're creating that space. And so entering into that space, I think, would require that letting go of these things.
Yeah. 10,000%.
Yeah. To really break through and really have that, whatever it is that we're coming into that for, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your website. And, because I love the title, and I'm so scattered right now, Way Home Wellness. I had to look at my paper here. But waymaking is, there was a gal I interviewed last year, and she uses that phrase, waymaking, but the way home. I love that, because home, the domesticity, being homed, not just in a building, but being in your home. Like you said, when you were a child, you were not, if I could speak for you, being not selved is to not be homed in one's embodiment, right? And so the way home, it just speaks so many things to me. So please,
I'm
share
glad.
that with us. Yeah, no, it's so powerful. No, it's so powerful.
Well, so talking about like what I do and how home comes into that, it's so simple. I love people, and I accept people, and I push them also if they're up for it. And I always tell them, like, take this with a grain of salt. If it doesn't resonate for you, that's fine. If I'm sharing feedback and it doesn't feel right, tell me that too. Like, this is a dance between you and I, this isn't me necessarily prescribing something that you have to take, but saying like, hey, here's what I'm hearing. And not just in your words, but like, I'm getting a sense of like maybe some nervousness here, or I feel like maybe you're worried I'm going to judge you for it, or maybe there's more you're not saying. And I just, you can say it. And I think when people feel that, they feel it. It's one thing to say it, but it's another thing for people to feel it. And I have people message me months later, years later, actually now at this point. And, they say things like, thank you so much, because if I hadn't met you, I don't think I would be where I'm at today. I don't think I would have taken those steps. I don't think I would have been brave enough to do that thing that we talked about in those sessions. And it's like, I didn't do that. You did. That was all you, right? I literally just held space for you to see that or to feel that or to speak that. And I think holding that space for someone, and I don't want to like generalize here, but I feel that that's what we all really need as children. We really just need to know that we're okay here and that it's safe to be who we are. And that no matter what we do, we're going to be loved and valued and cherished. We're a treasure. We're a gift. Our presence here, the fact that we're born is incredible. The earth is singing because you're here, you know, just like listen for a moment. And we've been so used to pain sometimes that we don't hear it anymore. Yeah. And like my mom and my dad, in my experience, like everything is a threat. So when you feel so small and the world feels so big, like you can go within yourself and you can close everyone out. But when you realize that you can have a home inside of yourself, and when you're a grown up, you kind of have to now, right? Like it's on you, friend, you know, but I'm here for you. I accept you. I love you. I see you. You're doing great. Let's brainstorm here. How can you push yourself further if you're ready to? That world starts to get a little bit bigger, but it has to start inside of yourself. And I didn't have that. And then I fostered that. And now I have that. And it's like, I just want everyone to know that they can have that when they feel ready.
And that is that's beyond any measure of value. You know, it's like being whole and homed, you know. The one guy that we talked about in our conversation on your show, who was a cockside guy, he calls it domicide. And it's what breeds nostalgia, because nostalgia the 50s were great. No, the nostalgia was originally a mental health crisis in the 19th century. And it was when soldiers were on far off lands getting killed for whatever, you know, stupid reason. And they would develop this crisis within themselves because they were unhomed. They were in a very foreign place. So the value of the metaphor of being homed within yourself, to be selving in a way that continuously keeps you as safe as your home, your brick and mortar home makes you feel, if you're privileged, if you're lucky enough to have those conditions, right? I have to accept, you know, that there's some people who don't feel safe in their home, you know, get a dog. But yeah, you know, it's like, that is the pillar. I think, as you said a second ago, that is the foundation. And from there, you can build a network of virtual machinery and psychic tools that you can use to waymake in the world in a healthy way. That's going to not only benefit yourself, because that's editorial, you know, self-improvement is really not about the self as much as it is the self-other, like the reciprocal nature of selving. I think that has to be kept in mind when we are doing self-improvement. It is for you, but it's not for the, you know, the Instagram you. It's more for the you that has to go home and face a partner or a child or a parent, you know, and relate to them. And as you said, meet them where they are and love them for warts and all, you know, for their flaws. Yeah.
And most people don't start that process of us working together just for themselves. Typically it's because their relationships are struggling and they want to do it for other people. I would say 99% of my clients, it's because they want to show up as a better self for other people. And that's a huge, like a resonant point. I get it. I can relate to that. I wanted that also. But there had to come a time where it was like, no matter what I did, no matter what self I showed up as, no matter how many self-help books I read, personal growth, I still don't think it was going to be the self that those people wanted. But now it can be the self that I'm here for and that I'm comfortable being and I'm proud of, you know, and not in an awful, like, macho look at me, you know, not that. I'm truly, like, I believe I'm a good person. And if you would have known me 10 years ago, I thought I was evil to my core, like would have convinced you that everything I was doing was with an ulterior motive because I was actually a bad person. And that's because that's what I was raised to believe about myself.
Right.
And I think that when we've been through hard things, we all have that to some degree, and it's difficult to convince a person otherwise. They have to get to that point of seeing it, feeling it, believing it. You can't convince them.
Yeah, it's a skin that needs to be shed, I think,
Yep.
and that the clarity will come from that. And that's a surrender process. That's having, your woman that you cornered in the church, we don't have to speak to that kind of faith, but if you have the small f faith in that there is a you on the other side of this metamorphosis or transfiguration or whatever it is, that it speaks to sobriety. Like, there's the you that it uses. And I did plenty of drugs and alcohol, so I know. And then there's a you that's sober, and it's terrifying when you're in substance and alcohol to conceive of that you. It's so alien. Like, it's like horrifying. But the faith is that you will build that bridge to get to that you. And as we joked in our conversation, it's so wonderful on that side. It's like people who get sober, some of them might be a little cranky and they have a cigarette and their coffee and they're like, I'm sober, God damn it. And I've been sober for a year now. Yeah. Maybe eventually they'll find their happy place. But a lot of people who come out into sobriety are like, oh God, this beats the shit out of, the meth psychosis that I was in, or 5
You guys
pints
gotta
of
try
vodka.
this.
Yeah, no shit. Beats the crap out of the vodka I was drinking. But yeah, there's that destination-ish thing that you move into. That, as you said a moment ago, the 10 years ago you is on the other side of that bridge, still part of you, but has given way to the you that is expressing itself now, that is seeing life with broader perspective. The aperture is much more open. And again, people getting sober, the aperture, it narrows very much down, because it's, vodka and meth or whatever, whatever your thing is, versus I can go hiking today. I can go be with a friend and have tea and do some yoga, so there's so many options available to you other than just, sit in a room and drink my quart of vodka, or get lit up. So.
And I say, like, it's moving into a sense of like embodiment and presence too, because when you're numbing out in that way or in any way, you're not really fully present in the moment. You're doing what you can to not be fully present in the moment. And like that drunk version of me, she was hilarious. She was so fun. Like, she was ready to do anything. I would put people on my back and squat them and regretted it. But by God, I'll do it.
You would do it. Yeah.
But even that, like, I wasn't listening to my body screaming at me, stop, this is hurting. Right? I was not present. And it can be terrifying to think that you have to be present with yourself, because if you're doing everything to escape being inside of that self, I didn't have a sense of self, right? Like, I was trying on hats left and right. Like, let's try this. I didn't even know what it would be like to be that other version of me. What if she's evil too? What if she's awful too? What if we bring all this baggage with us over there and it's just as bad over there? It is a leap of faith. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. I'm getting the impression that I have to have you back for another conversation, but there's a couple things I want to, because I think we're just about an hour and 10 minutes in, and we'll maybe run it to about an hour and a half, so because then the audience can digest that. But I do want to get you back because there's a bunch of other things that we can talk about. But I want, for the sake of the audience, to bring up two things that when I was researching you, are recent uploads or publications of yours. And so the first thing I want to bring in kind of relates to where we've been in the last few minutes. You did a video on your YouTube channel talking about how time is negotiable, or it is not that linear tick, 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 tick. And I love that, because you brought up phenomenology in that, and what trauma and adverse conditions do in terms of how we perceive time. I think of Henry Bergson, who spoke of time as duration, that it involves an experiencing agent or system, not just the tick, 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 but it's our palpating the world as, again, in phenomenological terms. So let's open that up for a minute, because I really love that one. And I'll have a link to your channel down below for people to listen to that, because I thought that was really neat. It was your most recent upload, so as we're recording. So let's open that up for a minute, so people can get an idea of what you're doing. And then there's one thing from your blog I want to share, and then maybe we'll bring it in for a landing. And if you're willing to come back, I want to
for sure.
continue. Yeah. Let's book another time. So.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, time and how we experience it.
So to me, time is the same as any other part of this human experience, right? Like there comes a point, at least for me, there came a point where I was like, is any of this even real? Like, how do I even know that I'm me and that I'm here experiencing this right now and that these other people are here? Like, I mean, we can watch The Matrix, right? And we'll all have that moment of like, whoa, like are we in a simulation?
Yeah, right.
But especially when it comes to trauma and the importance of the importance that we have placed on time as humans, because that's how we organize everything, right? And so you'll have different groups of people per se that will say everything that you're experiencing right now is a culmination of everything that happened in the past. And so you can't go back and change it. It is what it is. And that's what you're working with right now. But the thing is, that's not completely true, because this is going to be a past version of you also. And there's going to be a future version of you also. And if I make a different decision right now that could take me down a different path tomorrow, the same was true for that version of me then. She still held the same amount of potential in that moment. So just because I made that one decision in that moment then does not put me down a certain path of I'm going to do exactly this in the future. And I know there's people that argue different versions of this, but the way that comes into my work is by reminding people that means that you don't have to remain a victim to your past and to what happened to you. Because when we work together and we do it in the way that I do it, and I don't mean to like, oh, only I do it this way, but my perspective in my coaching is this. There comes a time when the person looks back and is like, okay, that is how I perceived it, but I can still change how I perceive it now. And it effectively rewrites how that past is informing my future.
Yeah. So
if we continue to look at it from that victimized state, like I did for so long, again, I could have ended up going down a much darker path so easily, easier than going down this other path. And so the hard work becomes looking at what happened to us in terms of, is this set in stone? Is this something that is going to continue affecting me this way? And it's not. I mean, I've seen it in my clients. It's not. And so in that, we have all these little pockets of, but this happened, but my memory was this. Well, now my memory has changed, like lost memories, forgotten memories, changing memories, repressed memories. We have so many different studies of how we perceive things. A smell can trigger a memory for some people way more easily than seeing something and having the memory pop up. So it's individual to each person. But time, in my opinion, I don't really think it's as important as the importance that we've given it. I think what's more important, in my personal opinion, is the presence that we didn't have in that moment in time. The fact that there wasn't a person there with us in that moment in time, which is what we likely really needed. And so these time memories become stuck points, and it's like muscle knots in our body. And it's like we stick to these hard, fast ideas of what things are. And we do that with our chronology too. We do that with our story too. And so I wanted to share with people, like, when you go through trauma, it completely changes the way that you perceive what happened. It changes how you perceive what's going to happen. It changes, you could feel no hope for the future. You could be in the present moment and think that 10 minutes have passed and find that 2 hours have passed and you've dissociated and you're like, well, now I've wasted. And then we start shaming ourselves for that, right? It's not the time that you lost. It's how you're treating yourself about the time that you just spent. And so I really want to share with people that all of this is so relative to how you're perceiving it, and to bring that self-compassion into every aspect of it, because we could know so many sciencey things, right? But if we're using those things to further beat ourselves up and further feel like a failure and further, oh, I'll get to that tomorrow, right? I'll start on Monday, whatever your particular brand of self-flagellation might be, or holding yourself back. It's all relative to your perspective. which is informed by what you've been through. And so that's why what I do and the way that I do it is so helpful for people, because I'm able to help them take a look at those things and say, but how do you want to perceive them? Let's sit with yourself that really needed a presence in that point in time. Go be with them. It's still here. Go be with them right now. And watch, you're going to wake up tomorrow and it's going to change the present and it's going to change the future. So I don't know if that really even answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, it was perfect. It was perfect because this is very important because, again, when we fall into victim consciousness, that influence, to me, it sets up a circuit because the trauma event occurs. Yeah, you're a victim. But
Absolutely.
the duration beyond that victimization, if it isn't, so the Cogsci people that I follow or neuroscience would tell you that when we retrieve a memory and they have this engram pattern of recruited neurons that, form a memory, it's this sort of collective thing that comes back up to bring a memory to the fore so that you can metacognize it or whatever, is that is changed or altered slightly by the retrieval. So every time you retrieve a memory, it's just slightly,
Absolutely. Yep.
canted a different way. And if you're in the mode of victim consciousness, and there's no judgment to that. I mean, we all go into that mode. The retrieval will be influenced perhaps by, rather than doing the work and doing the therapy, that the retrieval can come back and now you're in a mode of acceptance, release, empathy, whatever the mechanisms that you use to be therapeutic to that. If you stay in that,
it's a closed loop.
Right. You're just going to, and it's going to reinform, or it's like pulling a scab. You're just going to continuously pull that open.
Yep.
But the healing process or the therapeutic process would be that there's a new thing entering into that loop, and that the loop, it is influenced and changed for the better, hopefully. So yeah, that would be my little amendment to what you said. But yeah, no, I think everything you said is valuable in that sense that we have to be aware of being aware of being aware of being, it's not easy, but it's not hard if you're committed to it. And you start to, again, you taste that future expression of you that is unburdened by that which you are seeking transformation. So it can go into a circularity, or it can start to, reform itself and have less impact.
Yeah. And it's important for people to hear, there are people doing this. Growing up, I felt so different of the whole, being aware of being aware, because I was taking care of so many people, and I was intellectualizing constantly. So bringing that forward into my adult life, I have my own children, and then comes all these feelings that I'm now holding space for. Well, now I'm intellectualizing those. Now, and I want to reassure people who might be listening or watching that there are other people who experience that and who are doing that, because it can feel lonely.
Yep. Yeah. Especially, again, there's circuits that form, and it's so frustrating to be mired in. Let's speak to depression for a moment. It's so easy for someone who hasn't really had really strong depression. Yeah. And you hear this all the time, but it's like people who are dealing with a strong degree of depression, that you cannot embody that unless you are living it, right? So to offer remediation or help or therapy for that takes work, and it's a slow process, and that has to be accepted. That's part of the love for not just for the self, but for the individual, and that's just so hard for them to muster that. So yeah, it's a delicate process. It takes patience and time, but there are ways, and that's, I think, one reason that you see people like the psychedelic renaissance that they're talking about. Some of those things can be disruptors. A good, and I'm not advocating drug use, but DMT. Some people will go through that, and it might crack something that was, again, a hamster wheel of either anxiety or depression or self-loathing or whatever, and they'll come out of it and they'll be like, I get something. I feel more connected to something now. And so that's that catalyst that can make, and it doesn't have to be DMT. It can be other things. But yeah, there's a way. So for someone that's in that mire, be assured that there is a way, to do that. And so I'll bring up, your most recent blog that you had done, and that was, the stumbling that occurs, and you were revealing that there had been an issue in your work, and it brought about this, and this speaks a lot to everything we've talked about, right? So these things come up, and you are challenged on a couple different levels, but the strength that is derived from this and capturing that committee of you, those aspects of you, right? So I'll set that up that way and share with us, and that might be the way to wrap this one up, and then we'll book something in the next few days or week or so, and then we'll get it for part 2. So share the strength in stumbling. I like that.
I laugh at that one because it honestly reminds me of a client of mine who is a therapist, and we'll joke, and she'll be like, I'm a therapist and I have all this going on. Like, can you believe it? Like, let me get my shit together, man. And I'm like, I get it.
Therapists need therapists.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's one thing to show up, and I don't really know how to explain this part of myself. I don't like to say like, oh, a gift that I have is this, but something that I've always naturally been drawn to is having conversation with people and hearing also what they're not saying.
Okay.
And just gently inviting. And, it's like a push and pull, but like a dance back and forth. And so I feel like I deeply understand people. And I don't mean to say that about myself, like, oh, I'm so amazing, but like I've gotten this feedback, and I feel like I truly love people, and they feel that. That's what I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm attuned to people, possibly started as a very unhealthy, had to be attuned to my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. Survival, right? Yeah.
Yes. And so I still have that, of course, but I think now it's in a much more healthy way of like, hey, you seem upset, or what have you. But I don't do that with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll have these moments come up where I'm just like losing it, man. Like that situation for me, I misspoke at work. My boss reached out and was like, hey, I think maybe that might have been this. Do you think like maybe you should look more into that? And I was like, oh crap, thank you for catching that for me. Like I definitely want to go back and make amends with that client. Also, thank you for pointing that out to me so I can know for the future. But it was just like a doom spiral from there, man. I was like, she's going to fire me. I'm awful. Like ridiculous.
All this stuff comes up. Yeah. Yeah.
It was bad for the whole weekend. I was just, my stomach was in knots. I was so upset and like talking down to myself, which I don't typically do anymore, but I gave into it. And once I gave into it a little bit, then it was like, oh my gosh, let's spiral a little bit more. Let's see, just dig it in, like see if it's still in there.
Go for it.
Yeah. And I processed a lot that weekend. I feel like it was like a little ego journey for me of like, what am I really trying to get out of this job? What am I really trying to get out of being there for my clients? Is this still a sense of perfectionism? Is this still me trying to get validation for what I'm doing? Because I want people to think I do it perfectly. So many layers to it. Got back to work on Monday, and literally my boss did not think about it, did not notice, did not care. Not a big deal whatsoever. The client was like, oh no, that was actually helpful for me because it, I took it, as you always tell me, I took it with a grain of salt, and if it resonates, cool. And I was just like, oh, crisis averted. But not internally. Internally, it was a big learning experience for me. And I could have fallen into shame. I could have fallen into, my God, I help people with this every day. And then I did it myself. Like, I'm such a loser. I have no right to be helping people with these things. And it wasn't that. It was actually, I still kind of need to be tender with myself sometimes. I still desire validation sometimes. I'm a human.
Yeah.
I don't have to show up as this perfect robot all of the time.
Yeah.
And no one even cared because I know that they value me, right? Not because of what I'm doing, but because I'm a person and we value one another and we connect with one another. And it it was a very heart opening experience, but I laugh about it now because I'm just like, oh my God, I was so dramatic. Like that was.
Yeah, but on the flip side, at once you were off the hook with the supervisor and the client, was there this weight, and did you have a moment of release, like, oh my God, I spent all weekend destroying, tearing myself to shreds. They're cool, and I'm feeling that pretty sincerely. Was there some kind of lightness that came from that beyond the just like, look what I gave myself this weekend. I gave this opportunity to walk through some fire and feel, but also like, just because I've been in those situations, and when everybody's cool, I'm like, thank God, because again, my childhood was constant combat.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, right. And I'm like, oh good, this one didn't blow up in my face,
Yeah, for
So
sure.
did you? Yeah, okay, good.
It also
Because I'm
helped
feeling
me
that
see,
myself.
yeah, it helped me see too that like I had still carried small pieces with me of what I had learned of like people are a threat, the world is a threat, like this boss is an authority figure, that's a threat, like they could take your job from you at any moment, they could, and
Yeah.
so seeing that was still there in some small way is very humbling. But it was also like, oh, thank God, like I can trust people a little bit with a small piece of my heart, I can be
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, because I think that might be a nice high note to pause. And when we get you back, because you and I had talked about this in pre-meets before we recorded anything, about in the transformation process, in our even spiritual kind of work, you talked about, you had checked in with this thing and checked in with that. When we're vulnerable and when we are not undergirded, and we don't have a support frame to help us waymake in that sense, that would be something fun to touch on, is the susceptibility that might be there. Again, falling into following gurus and, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to get your insight on that. So maybe that could be one thing we could cover in the next one, and we'll stay in touch on email and maybe set up a couple of other ideas that we can share. But I think in this one, we covered a lot of terrain, and I'm glad I said something to the audience beforehand that we were going to bring out some heavy things, but I think you and I would both be floored to know how many people would be like, yeah, that resonates with me. I think there's a lot of that in the world, and I'm not saying that with any lightness in my heart, because it's a shame, but the gift we get as adults is to get over our childhood, right? And get over our adolescence. Yeah, that's the one thing about adulthood. It's like, I gotta deal with this, right? And maybe, my, 30 onward will be wonderful. Yeah. But
I know.
I gotta sort this all out. So there is a vast ocean of desire, I think, for people to move beyond that and ground themselves in some sort of acceptance and normalcy and feeling human and whatever that means. But yeah, just humaning in the right possible ways, that fit for your life, but that are recognizably pro-social, positively valent, productive, connecting, and empathetic, and all those wonderful virtues. They should never be underestimated or undersold. That form of waymaking can be had, and it's a good life. At least I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seeking good. So like you said, when a person becomes a parent, that their heart is out there, and I've come across people who have really low self-esteem, but they'll empathize with a cat that's suffering, or a person that's suffering exterior to themselves. And I'm like, do you see how possibly that could be something you'd feel for yourself? And they're just like,
Yeah.
So right, it's a door opening, and it's like that empathy and the compassion you feel for that cat or dog, or, that's not feeling good, or something's happened, or the person, let's start with that, and you have that within you, right? Do you see that that compassion and the empathy? So we could talk about all those things, I guess, in another conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing and being willing to be candid about your life, and because again, the connections, I think that's one of the keystones or cornerstones rather, to people making progress in their own work, is to say, oh, thank God I'm not a freak, and this isn't unique, and I'm not an outlier in this. people dealing with this, I think, are in the bigger part of the bell curve, and the flat lines are more like the Leave It to Beaver families that, everything was neat, father knows best, all that crap from the 60s that ruined a lot of people. Jesus, these people, they're living, what the hell? Yeah. Where's my Lord Cleaver, Anyway, but yeah. So thank you again for sharing everything and having this conversation. I think it fits so well within my show and what I do, if I call it a show, my series. No, it's
I'm glad
perfect.
to hear it.
Yeah. And I know it's going to have an impact on people. So I appreciate that, Ashana. So, we'll close this one down, and, we'll stay in touch to get another, recording date set up. To the audience, thank you so much, for being here with us. You can look forward to a second part coming up. I'll try to get with Ashana, so this will probably get released, and then a week later I'll release part 2. So we'll record between now and then. So we'll make that work.
We'll get it done.
Anyway,
we'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. That's all production stuff. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you guys so much, you two people, and Ashana, I'll say goodbye to you after I stop the recording. But thank you all so much, audience, for your time and attention.